couple of our co-hosts down with the bird flu. So Pat and I will
How are you?
we'll do the inaugural podcast by ourselves. So just to kind of level set, what this is all about. What we want to do is do this on a weekly basis. We're going to go through kind of where we feel the top news stories, market related are, what's news, what do you need to pay attention to, what's noise. We're also going to talk about the intersection, between what's going on in the market and in what you can use AI for. As I talked about in kind of my intro video, I think AI is a game changer, and it allows you to do so much, at your fingertips, that it's going to totally and completely change my industry. So we're going to weave in, a lot of those things. We may go an hour, we may go a little less. We'll see how things go. So first story that kind of caught my eye over the past couple of days is seeing a lot of news organizations pick up, is the Magnificent Seven overvalued? And the Magnificent Seven, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Apple, Google, Meta, Tesla. And I missed one, but
Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, NVIDIA, Meta, Tesla.
Yeah, I missed Amazon, whatever. And, whether they're overvalued or not is important, because the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100 are crappy indexes, but a lot of people are putting money in them constantly, 401ks, dollar cost averaging. Why I say they're crappy is they're market cap weighted. So if you think you're getting 500 stocks in the S&P 500 or 100 stocks in the NASDAQ 100, you're really not. You are, but I don't know what the numbers are, but like 40% or more of both of those indexes of those Magnificent Seven stocks. So if they are overvalued, that's a problem. What this talk always reminds me of is I was a broker back in the late 90s during the internet boom. And at that time, I vividly remember having a conversation with somebody about Amazon. And Amazon at that point, all they were was an online bookseller. They weren't making any money, and they weren't projected to make any money for a long time. But they had a market cap more than Borders, which, if you don't remember, was a big brick and mortar bookseller, and Barnes and Noble, same deal, combined. And I just couldn't wrap my head around why the market was saying this online bookseller that wasn't making any money was worth more than the two major booksellers combined. I mean, at that point, I used to like going into bookstores. You'd, hey, I got a flight coming up. I don't know exactly what I want. I want something on finance. You walk into the bookstore, you look around, you pick out your book. What I didn't appreciate, unfortunately, because I would have bought Amazon, was that they would morph into selling everything online, and that the marketplace would change, where we'd have iPhones, where we could have Amazon app, and we could sit on our couch in our underwear and buy stuff online. I can't remember the last time I walked into a store. I do everything online now. And so are the Magnificent Seven overvalued? I mean, maybe. Could these companies morph into something beyond? We're going to talk about something Microsoft announced yesterday. And you look at a company like Tesla, for example, and I'll put up Tesla. A lot of people hate it and and bet against it, and they're looking at it, I think a lot of them, as, hey, it's an EV company. And if it's just an EV company, is it worth this much? And I wonder whether Tesla's more than that. because they've got their hands in so many different things, self-driving, robotics, etc. If I had, and again, I'm not saying Tesla is going to, pull an Amazon, but if I had to pick one name that could morph into something beyond what it is, it could be Tesla. So Pat, I know you've got some thoughts on this as well.
Okay, well, I would pull up a chart of Bitcoin and lay it up against, the Mag 7, right? And I go, these two charts look exactly the same. So, it's just, to me, again, we talk about asymmetric risk at Tuttle Cap. That's one of our big things. Clearly, this is not heads, you win, tails you win. This is, heads you win, tails you lose, and the economy loses. So I don't really like this one personally. I mean, I think this is more liquidity bubble. I just sent out a stat, 56% of money managers think this is the most crowded trade. And that may be the one reason to go against it, really. But I think this is too crowded. I think this is super crowded.
All right. So you think the Magnificent Seven's overvalued now? Is that?
Yes, clearly.
All right. Yeah. No, I mean, that's,
I mean, this would be one I would drop this is one I would definitely, talk about and say, yeah, for sure.
All right. Cool. No, I respect, and I'm not saying it isn't. Markets are looking a little toppy. Today is not a good day. I mean,
it's also trading at 40 times earnings too, right? And I think it's a misnomer because I think Tesla's like at 130 times or something. So if you average all that out, I think it stretches it a little bit, but it's still over 40 times earnings. I mean, again, I don't know. Just seems like a lot. Seems like a lot.
No, I mean, you are, yeah, I mean, I have no problem with that opinion.
And I own a Tesla too, by the way. And I think it's the greatest thing ever. I mean, I get around town. I never have to go to the gas station. It's a cool car. It has all sorts of cool features. Love it. Love Elon. But, not on this one.
Yeah. Hey, that works. Yeah, again, I would not be surprised to, see some sort of correction, some sort of sideways movement. This is something I did ask GBT about yesterday. It still loves the Magnificent Seven for what it's worth. I mean, I think AI is powerful, but nobody is 100%. Unfortunately, the only one who's 100% is our co-host Jeremy, who's got the bird flu. But besides that, no one's 100%. GPT likes it. I am long all of these names, but one of the things we teach in the heat formula is always have hedges. And so I have hedges that are doing well today. I'd rather they not, but one other one on here that I'll mention. So Apple today is kind of a port in the storm. It sold off pretty hard beginning of the year, tried to rally, sold off again. They came out with some news that I wrote about in the newsletter this morning or yesterday, I don't remember which, where they're replacing some Qualcomm stuff. And again, one of the beauties of using AI is I don't need to understand the technology because I don't. I don't know how to make an iPhone. I put it into ChatGPT. It liked it. I do think Apple is another one of the names that could morph, because imagine like real, back and forth AI on your iPhone, what it could do. So food for thought. Any other thoughts on this before we move on?
Not here.
All right. Next thing I want to talk about are the Fed minutes, which came out yesterday. And, the Fed minutes are just minutes of their previous meeting. Most of the time, it's not that newsworthy. And, the markets seemed to shrug off yesterday. But again, today's sell-off could be partially to do with that. It doesn't look like it, though. But it's always interesting because you get a sense of what these guys are talking about. Now, my thinking on the Fed is a couple of things. I've always thought, number one, they're totally clueless. They got inflation wrong. And probably had a lot to do with causing the inflation. I think that, them cutting, you look at, I like to look at 10-year interest rates, because the Fed controls the short end, bond traders control the long end. And to me, bond traders are way smarter than the Fed guys. And, if you look, here's a chart of the 10-year interest rate from September. We were in the 3.6s, and now we're up almost 1% on the 10-year when the Fed is raising. So to me, this is bond traders telling Powell he's clueless. And if you listen to Powell's presser in December, it was the most off his game he's ever been, and which is one of the reasons the market sold off. So in the Fed minutes, what they were talking about is, how they'll have to pause because they're not sure what to make of tariffs. And that's going to get real interesting, because first off, are tariffs inflationary? And the answer is it depends. If Trump puts a tariff on and takes it off in a day, that's not inflationary. If Trump puts a tariff on and the company doesn't pass that on in costs, not inflationary. If Trump puts a tariff on and the company does pass it on, but US manufacturers and consumers have other options, not inflationary. But if we don't, yeah, it's inflationary. So I think we can assume that if the tariffs stay on, they will probably be inflationary. Now, I know Trump has a lot of guys in his circle that don't like tariffs, but he's also got guys who do. So who knows where this is going to go? I think you got a bunch of guys in the Fed reading Art of the Deal and trying to figure this out. But, I think they're going to have to sit on their hands. And I think Wall Street has no clue. So like I read a lot of research. Jeffries today said they expect 2 rate cuts. There's a guy, Mike O'Rourke, who I love his daily note. He thinks the Fed's going to be flat for the foreseeable future. He also doesn't think the Fed can raise rates during Trump. I mean, Trump would have a freaking tantrum if the Fed tried to raise rates. But this is going to be important going forward. And what I would look at is I would look at the 10-year. And this is going to tell you what bond guys are saying. So at the beginning of the year, bond guys were saying, hey, the Fed's way behind the curve. Right now, we're at like 4.5. That's okay. If we start getting up near 5, that's danger zone for stocks. So I don't know, Pat, any thoughts on the Fed, on inflation, on interest rates? I bet
I have a few thoughts, as you know. Number one, I was a broker a long time, and we always used to say you can't really bet on whatever an economist said. I think following an economist for trying to make money in the market is not very smart. Number one. So I don't think this conversation is really going to help people make money, personally. All right. Number two, I look at this from like a Peter Lynch perspective. Right. I live out here in California. I have 4 kids. College prices, I don't know. I don't think they've gone down through the roof. Right. Egg prices. I think my wife just saw like 18 eggs for $40. Orange juice. I don't know what my kids drink a ton of it. And it's like $12 a gallon for the crappy orange juice, not the Simply Light or whatever it is. It's just the regular crappy orange juice. So, insurance costs. I mean, I don't know. I don't think those have gone down recently, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, I think this is part of a conversation we can have, but I don't think, if you're targeting a CPI or whatever index you're using, it's not working here. My guess is when we talk,
it's not real. I mean,
it's not real.
No, I mean, there's, I don't know if the guy is still out there, but there's a guy who runs a website called Shadow Stats, where when the government announces a number, he comes out and says, all right, here's the real number. So I agree with you there.
They used to have that Big Mac index, I think, in The Economist. I don't know if they still do. And I mean, how can you even, because the Big Mac used to be like this and now it's like this. But I think the reality is that, I talked to my wife about this, and we think prices have doubled in 5 years. If you do the math, backward math, that's like 15% inflation. That's what I think the real number is for me and my family.
Yeah, I mean, could be. One thing I would say, I saw an article in Barron's the other day that said, oh no, inflation, buy TIPS, Treasury Inflation Protected Securities. Don't buy TIPS. TIPS are not a protection for inflation. If you look at, and yeah, I wrote about this in, I don't know, the newsletter one of these days. I mean, if you looked at it last year, just the ETF, TIP, I think it's just TIP, it underperformed TBIL, which is T-bills. It didn't help you. The way to protect your money from inflation is to make more than inflation, not to buy TIPS. So yeah, don't get caught up in that.
Well, I mean, tips are tied to the CPI, by the way. So I mean,
Well, I mean that, yeah,
if the CPI is at 4, and your friendly Pat over here is telling you it's really at 15, let's say somewhere in between it's 6 or 7, you're probably not keeping up. That would be my analysis. But let me go back to the last point, right? Talking about tariffs, and I think we missed something on this, right? So,
yeah,
like Palmer Lackey, who's one of our guys here, we follow him. He runs. He's the guy who founded Oculus, and now he runs how do you pronounce this again?
Anduril or something.
Anduril, right? So he's out there now, and and I think he's like the next like Bezos or next, Elon. He's kind of in that category in my mind, right? So he's out there talking about American manufacturing jobs, right? And he's basically saying that if we're exporting all our jobs, right, no one smart's going to want to go to manufacturing, So, and then we're kind of exporting all our technological expertise to other places. So, yeah, you can there's a whole security risk thing, but I think if we're exporting all our jobs elsewhere, we're really like leaving our manufacturing industry is going to shrink, which therefore is going to make us less competitive in the long run. So I think tariffs, yeah, in the short term could be inflationary, but in the long term, maybe we build our own manufacturing base, and then, in theory, prices would come down because there would be more structural supply of manufacturing or whatever. So that's what Palmer Lackey argues. I actually buy that more than, whatever the other one is. I'm not clear what it is, but
that's what Trump is trying to do. And he said that. He said, look, yeah, short term, there may be some pain. Long term, he's got a plan. Whether it'll work or not, Trump fans will say, oh, yeah, let's go. Trump detractors obviously would take the other side of that. But that is his plan. He wants to bring everything back into the U.S. And I mean, I'm all for that, especially the chips, like if Taiwan ever did get invaded and, China cut off the supply of chips, we're pretty much screwed. So, as much as possible, I'm a fan, bring it back. And yeah, if you have to have a little bit of pain short term to get there, I would vote for that too. All right, next story. So Microsoft made an announcement yesterday about quantum. Quantum computing, again, beauty of AI. I have no idea what quantum computing is, but a couple months, and I've traded IONQ, I've traded Rigetti. They were always great trading stocks because they move. But I never really thought much about, what is quantum. And Google made an announcement about Willow a couple of months back. And a guy in the industry who I respect a lot gave me a call. He's like, Matt, this is a game changer. Quantum could be more important than AI, which, obviously that piqued my interest. So I started playing around with GPT, asking it, who are the main players? Google, IBM, NVIDIA. I mean, their chips are used in everything. And then you have, the little guys, the IONQ, the Rigetti, the D-Wave, the Qubits, all of those companies. And I don't think my original screen brought up Microsoft. And then yesterday, Microsoft, and the thing with quantum, I mean, Jensen came out and said, oh, it's like 20, 30 years away. I think Zuckerberg came out and said it's like 10 years away. Then someone came out and said, oh, no, it's less. I saw Mark Andreessen on a podcast. He said it was a ways away. And in Microsoft's announcement, they're basically like, no, I mean, we just made a breakthrough. It's really close. I bought the moment I saw it. I guess, Microsoft had a pretty good day yesterday. I mean, the market was up. It's a port in the storm today. Not up as much as you would expect. So, maybe people don't believe it. Maybe people don't think they'll be able to monetize it. I know that some of the quantum names were doing well here. No, IONQ.
So Microsoft said they developed a new state of matter yesterday, right? Along with this.
Yeah, again,
they call it topological superconductivity is the quote unquote what it's called, right? So I have a friend, literally, who's a rocket scientist, one of my best friends, and now he works in quantum computing for Amazon. He's one of their main engineers. So I sent him a thing yesterday. I'm like, dude, I mean, I'm actually looking at my texture, so I'm trying to remember what I said to him. And he said, I admit, I haven't tried to wrap my head around WTF that even means. So he's not even sure. And he's like so he doesn't even know either, just so you know.
All right. Yeah, I mean, then I don't feel so bad. It looks like D-Wave is actually doing the best here, up 10%. I mean, but this is a stock where, I mean, up 10% is nothing. I mean, it's gone from, it went from 1 to 11 in like no time. And these are all names that I'm in. I used to trade quantum names. I don't have time to really trade anymore. I do some systematic stuff, but I don't have time to do what I was doing before. But I own all the quantum stocks. I did double up on Microsoft the moment I saw that news, just in case. And, these are long-term holds for me, volatile stocks. I mean, this could easily go back down to 1. I think what we don't know, and, another reason why I like the Mag 7 is, is there going to be anything left for the smaller guys like D-Wave or, IONQ or Rigetti if Microsoft or IBM or NVIDIA or Google wants to dominate this industry? And I don't know the answer to that, but I like in my portfolio, I want to have some of the big guys who aren't going to double. And then, a stock like this that, it could go to 1, but it could also go to 14. And, talking about asymmetrical risk, which we talk about in the heat formula, the way I get exposure to these is options. So I know, my downside is limited. So, whatever I have in calls on like a D-Wave, if it goes to 1, my calls go to 0. They don't go below 0. So I, lose what I put in, and my upside is unlimited. So something to keep an eye on, and you can use AI to educate yourself. I mean, if I had the time, I'd ask ChatGPT, put it in, really, really simple language, educate me on quantum and tell me why you think this is bigger than AI or why you think it isn't. I don't have the time for that, and I'm not that interested, but you could do it. Anything else to add on this?
Not from my end.
All right. Let's next talk about Palantir. Palantir. So
Can you explain to us first what Palantir is? Because I've spent hours trying to figure out what they actually are and what they do. So the dude's cool, Alex Karp. I mean, he's out there, but what is Palantir? Honestly, seriously.
I look at them a lot like Anduril. So, I mean, I think Palmer Luckey, maybe he's the next Jeff Bezos. He could also be the next Karp. Yeah, I look at it very similar. I think they're involved in, a lot of where, if you look at the future of warfare. So we recently filed, for example, for a drone ETF, because I think drones are the future of warfare. How do you defend against that stuff? And, I remember during the inauguration, I'm watching, Trump in his car, and the news, whatever the news channel was, oh, he's got anti-drone technology on his car. I mean, I think that's going to be a lot of where warfare is: drones, anti-drones. And then, I mean, you and I both listened to that Sean Ryan podcast with Palmer Luckey. He's talking about robotics, where, right now you put AI in a robot and it moves like a 90-year-old dude, kind of like you. But eventually it'll be an 80-year-old, a 70, a 60, a 50, and then at some point it'll be able to do what a Navy SEAL does. But I mean, way off. But
Can I interject here real quick? So first of all, you guys on the podcast, there's this a podcast, or it's on YouTube. Palmer Luckey, Sean, is it Sean Ryan, right? That's his name.
Sean Ryan.
Yeah. 4 hours long podcast, but I highly recommend it. That's one thing we're talking about, just so you know.
Yeah, thank you. So interestingly, I'm always kicking around reading the news, and there's a reporter at Barron's who I like a lot, Jacob Sonnenschein, and he wrote an article yesterday morning saying, hey, Palantir's overvalued, sell. So I threw his thesis into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT said, he's right and he's wrong. He's short term, yeah, it's probably overvalued. It's due for a pullback. Longer term, it's fine. Buy the dip. And, I've owned it for a while, and my position was getting pretty big. So I looked at what ChatGPT had to say, and I cut my position, I think, by a third. And that was right before this thing tanked. So sometimes better to be lucky than good. I still a big position. Well, it was a bigger position for me before this dip. GPT still likes it. I mean, obviously you look at this chart, it's got to come down some, but I do look at this as a company that's involved in a lot of the future of warfare stuff. I know something came out yesterday about the Pentagon reducing defense spending, and I'm not worried about that. I think they're going to reduce the stupid spending. They're not going to pay $800 for a hammer, but future of warfare stuff, I think they'll do. I think CARP may be selling as well. So, I'm going to watch this. You look at this gap, the way you can look at gaps. So the low on the gap day is 100.51. And, that held today, but that'd be kind of a level where I'd get concerned. I mean, if it closed under, 100.50, I'd be a little worried about that. The 50-day is at 84.23. Certainly, if it hit the 50-day and bounced, I'd be buying more of this thing. So I'm not worried. And again, I mean, throw it into ChatGPT. Say, hey, what does Palantir do?
One more thing, talking about defense spending and going back to Palmer Luckey. I mean, imagine you could have like these autonomous, Iron Man type things that would go out and do all the stuff you need to get done without putting people at risk. Are you going to pay up for that? Is that going to grow the budget? That I think that would be the opposite argument. I mean, there's a lot of smart stuff coming down the pipe that is different that I think is going to save lives. I think, I would vote for paying up for. I don't know if that's the right way to phrase it, but that's for what it's worth.
And that's where AI can help. So, one of the things when I put, you'll see something, whatever is doing whatever. And one of the things I make sure to ask in my prompt is not only, hey, give me the companies that this is going to help, but make sure that this is significant, given their current revenue. So like one reason why Microsoft may not be going up is, okay, great, they made a quantum breakthrough, but, for a Microsoft, that's a rounding error. Whereas if, IONQ had done it, that's massive, and you see the stock quadruple. So that's something that's also important in the mix is, yeah, there may be a trend or something that's helping a company, but is it a game changer? So yeah, that's an important point and something to always remember, because again, with these Mag 7 stocks, you need a lot to move the needle.
Yeah, and I mean, just one other thing. I mean, on this defense in Mag 7, NVIDIA, owns, I think, 3 or 4 or 5, I don't know, give me the number, but like defense tech startups, I think they're trying to spin out or IPO, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I mean, that's, I I don't know. I think that's a positive for NVIDIA.
I mean, every every search I do in GPT, where I'll see, I'll throw in articles, I'll throw in things. Hey, this is going on. Who are the winners? NVIDIA is almost always in there, and and I have it rank them, on a scale from 1 to 10. NVIDIA is always a 9 or a 10. I mean,
Right.
they've got their hands in so much stuff. It's yeah. I mean, it's crazy.
They report this week, right? On the
The
26th,
26, they report.
37 billion in revenue, 84 cents.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that'll be interesting. Yeah, let's see. All right, so they report on the 26th. Nice undercut and rally at the 200-day here. So, for those of you, and again, I don't, I don't actively trade anymore. I don't have time. My favorite chart pattern, and I learned this from a guy, Gil Morales, who he's kicking around on Twitter. He sells a service. Highly recommended if you're a trader. It's an undercut and rally, where when a stock undercuts a key level, either that's a key low or a key moving average, like the 200-day, and moves back above, that's a buy signal. And then you use the level as a stop. So, for example,
Well, for those of you that don't know, I mean, that low in February is when DeepSeek came out a couple of weeks ago and said, "Hey, we have this super cheap AI," and Nvidia got rocked because they're the latest and greatest, chip for AI.
yeah, and we'll talk about that. And then on February 5th, it broke back above the 200-day. And so if you were a trader, you could have bought it there. Let's say you bought it at the high 125, and you use the 200-day as your stop. So you have a tight stop, and you're sitting on a $13 profit right now. Not too bad. Their earnings are going to be important because it's going to take a lot to move the needle for them. They're going to need to blow it out again, and if they don't, short term, that could be tough for the stock. And because it is such a big component of all the indices, they're what they do is going to be important. So I own NVIDIA. I am slightly hedged. I am trying out a hedging strategy that GPT helped me develop, where I'm looking at the yield max covered call ETFs. And those are interesting. So, they buy NVIDIA, or they have a synthetic long, and then they sell a call. I think they suck because you're giving up a lot of your upside by selling the call. And if you look, the share price tends not to do so well because you're giving up a lot of your upside. And you look at the total return, it doesn't do nearly as well as buying the underlying. And we'll get into covered calls, on another one of these in great depth. The option market makers price the options, accordingly, with the understanding that, hey, these are going to pay big dividends. I think I've found a good kind of risk reward scenario on, buying puts on these. We'll see. I'm testing it. GPT likes it, but GPT isn't always 100% accurate. So, I'm not going to go out there and bang the table for this until I see with my own money whether I'm missing something or not. And I've got other hedges as well. But yeah, any more thoughts on NVIDIA here?
It strikes me like it's going to blow it out. I don't know. I mean,
I mean, they're going to blow
I
it
don't have
out.
a crystal
It isn't going to
ball.
be enough.
All right.
That's
Just the way the stock is acting. I mean, it just, I don't even do this, but God, I would say the way this thing's come off that low, man, somebody knows something somewhere. But that's just me.
We'll see. Next topic, China. So you mentioned DeepSeek. Right after DeepSeek came out, did it cost 6 million? Probably not. Is it a game changer in any way, shape, or form? Probably not. But what it did tell us is China's down the road on AI. And it seems like, from people who know this stuff better than me, that China's anywhere from a few months to a few years behind us. But that means there's other stocks to buy. So as soon as I saw DeepSeek and finished licking my wounds from my data centers and my AI infrastructure stocks that got their butt kicked, I started asking GPT, who are some of the beneficiaries? And it hit on China right away. Right after that, 13Fs came out. Tepper has pretty much all of his fund in China. And China's taken off since then. So this is one of the stocks GPT identified, GDS Holdings. So if you look, this thing is more than doubled, just this month. I've been taking profits because this got to be a ridiculous part of my portfolio. But again, the beauty of using AI, I'd never heard of this stock before. It's a Chinese data center. And again, I would not be buying it up here. And I'll probably be, no, I don't need to cut right now. I cut enough. But this thing's been off the charts. Baba is another one. Just crazy move. Hasn't quite doubled, but yeah, it's a bigger company. Do I need to cut my Baba? Yeah, I might take some profits on Baba. The other one I own is Baidu, which has not done nearly as well. Yeah, up a little today. So Baidu has not done nearly as well. I think Baba announced a deal with Apple, which hurt Baidu. And then Xi, or however you pronounce his name, had a meeting with all the top kind of Chinese CEOs, and the Baidu CEO wasn't there, which is not the same as Jensen Huang not being at Trump's inauguration. That when you're not at a Chinese meeting, that means you may be in jail. But interestingly, Baidu had an undercut rally yesterday at the 50-day. So if you see here, see that. So it moved below the 50-day, moved right back up. Today it's up. Now it could not get above the 200-day. So, a little bit iffy here. I'm going to hold on to it. Some of the other stocks that GBT recommended that I'm not in, Pinuendo, however you pronounce that, JD. These have, PDD, if I'd gotten into it, that would have been a nice one. Yeah, but not as good as the other ones. Yeah, one of the things I do is I have GPT rate stocks from 1 to 10. And if it's not an 8 or above, I'm really not that interested, which is why I didn't, these are probably like 7s and 6s. So, I wouldn't be jumping into China just now. I'd wait for some sort of dip. Typically, the time to buy China is when nobody else wants it. But, keep an eye on this with all of our stocks at ridiculous valuations. And I also filed for an ETF around this theme as well.
So we have a lot. I talk to a lot of people here on a day-to-day basis, investment professionals, regular people.
Yeah.
I think that this is the most polar topic matter that we cover. Either pro-China or anti-China. Obviously you look at these places like Shenzhen, and they have like these crazy cities with all these funky lights. You're like, God, I want to live there. And then you have people talking about, stealing intellectual property or real estate bust. So I think it's all over the board on China. That was what I hear. But let me add a couple facts that I read about China. So large cap in China year to date are up 17%. Matt discussed David Tepper, who is the CIO, or runs Appaloosa Capital Management, I believe it's called. That's 37% of his portfolio, right? Then I just ran some information here myself. I think it's interesting. I wrote this down. Many investors are emotionally avoiding China due to past losses, regulatory fears, and U.S.-China tensions. This could lead to mispricing. So I think there's a lot of probably mispricing potential here, obviously. Secondly, many Chinese stocks trade at single-digit PEs, which limits downside risk. So I think that's cool. And then you talk about massive upside. If China eases regulations, stimulates the economy, or reopens capital markets, there could be a sharp re-rating of China. So, I mean, I think it's all over the place, but, certainly there's, if you're trading at single-digit earnings and you got, our Mag 7 at 40, I don't know.
Yeah, we will see. Again, the time to have done this was on the DeepSeek news. I don't know that I would be jumping in now if I wasn't in there already. But, one of the things that, I would advise is train yourself to think like that. When you hear news, immediately, who are the winners? Who are the losers? And again, beauty of AI. I don't need to know. I take an article, throw it into GPT. Who are the winners from this? Who are the losers from this? And, and get into that quickly versus, seeing like, a GDS now and being like, oh yeah, I mean, if I loved it at 2250, I love it at 4581. Just insane up here. So, and the problem with Wall Street research is, they're going to come out and tell you to start buying it up here. And,
I just looked on the thread here, Matt, and Howard here responded. I think this is on Palantir. They provide cloud, SAS, and especially cloud for defense modeling to the DoD. Biggest of the Beltway bandits, as we call them, provide all software solutions to the Fed government. Yeah, I mean, I would say that, but like, what is that? Maybe if you could expand on that a little bit, Howard. Like, what does that mean, really? Because I know they do that, but I don't really get what that is. That was really more my question. And then Bill asked, what is the short interest on the Mag 7? Oh, geez, that must be out of whack, right? It's probably insane, but I don't think we have that information.
We do not. I mean, I could look it up, but I'm not going to. All right, so let me look up a couple of robot stocks.
Thanks for that, Howard, though. Thanks for the explanation. But if you could add to that, I would like to know. I really want to know. I'm not saying this rhetorically. I really would like to know.
Totally. So next story, I think yesterday, one of the companies NVIDIA backs, it's a robotics firm called Field AI. And they announced they were looking to raise a whole bunch of money based on a $2 billion valuation. That caught my eye because robotics, and we talked about this with Palmer Luckey, is the next generation of where AI is going. And, people call it physical AI, putting AI in a robot. So I saw Jensen on a podcast. I keep forgetting this woman's name. She does some cool podcasts. Maybe Emma something. I don't know. But Jensen said, hey, look, at some point, everybody in your house is going to have a robot. And it's going to be AI equipped. Hopefully it isn't going to kill you. And it's going to do all sorts of stuff for you.
Emma Pearson?
What's that?
Emma Pearson?
No, that's not it.
All right.
I don't know. She did some really cool podcasts. She also did one with Zuckerberg. Yeah, I mean, cool stuff. Yeah, the robotic stocks have I've owned the robotic stocks for a while. Like, Intuitive Surgical is one. I mean, that one's okay right now. Rockwell. Yeah, I mean, they're actually sort of selling off on the news here. Yeah, I mean, Aptiv's doing okay. Mobileye. Yeah, I mean, not looking so good. Nothing really. I'm looking at all of my robotics holdings. They're all getting their butt kicked. Now, again, it could be all right. So, I mean, Deere is interesting. Deere's a sneaky robotics play because one area you're going to see the robots is in agriculture all over the place, and Deere is leading in that. So, that's had a run. That's been one of my best ones. All the other ones are really getting their butt kicked. I mean, it could be because people think, well, if the company's backed by NVIDIA, they'll be the winner. Could also be people thinking the Mag 7 are going to be the winner and all these smaller companies are going to have nothing. I mean, that's what you got to be careful of. Again, like I said, I like to have some of the big guys, and then I like to sprinkle some money around to the companies that might double with the understanding that, they might also go to zero. So that could be kind of what we're seeing. So
well, Deere is obviously a big beneficiary of robotics for sure. I'm going to respond to what Howard said here. So the government programmers are obsolete. A lot of the systems still use COBOL and other outdated languages. So they rely heavily on government contractors to build out new integrations or systems. Palantir is the biggest beneficiary of that, but they're a trusted source of cyber protection, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's it. Sweet. Thanks, Howard. Now I know. Now we know.
Now we do. Howard is better than AI.
All right, so I have I kind of got lost here. I was reading Howard's thing. I was engrossed in that, but let's talk about like NVIDIA. So NVIDIA-backed robotics startup Field AI. So this is what I was saying earlier, right? So they're doing a raise at $2 billion. It was 500 mil last summer. Competitors are also looking for funding. Skilled AI is looking for $4 billion valuation, right? So this is a big business. And then, NVIDIA recent divestment from Serve Robotics and SoundHound. So NVIDIA is in there. I mean, I don't know. I guess, here we go again. Another spot on NVIDIA. I think it's so far like NVIDIA, 3 heads and, 1 tails.
Yeah, I mean, all these Mag 7 stocks are into all of this stuff. SoundHound is another one I own. NVIDIA's 13F filing and they didn't have a big position, and it showed they got out. Again, I put that into GPT, and its thinking was that may not necessarily be a negative. And you also, I mean, the problem with the 13F is it's a snapshot in time, already 45 days old. So, I'm still in SoundHound. I think, physical AI is going to be huge. Like I said, I mean, we're all going to have robots. Sound AI is going to be cool. Again, there's this guy out there in AI, Larry Connors, who does some great work. And one of the things he's always talking about is eventually, and maybe even not eventually, I mean, maybe now, like you'll be able to take a market call, an earnings call where, a company is, talking about their earnings, answering questions, and you'll be able to throw it into AI, and AI will be able to, like, just by listening, to be able to be like, you know what? It sounds like the CEO's lying. He's nervous about this. Last month or, last quarter, they were saying this. Now they're saying it this way. All sorts of cool stuff that, I mean, I got to figure if you're like one of the top hedge funds, you're all over this. Now, whether SoundHound would, be a winner, or whether it would, go back to one of the Mag 7, who knows? But that's another real interesting area of AI. I also had some other names, and is it EVH, I think? No, that's for something different. I thought I had some other sound names. Ooh, actually, EVH might be medical AI. I've got that on my watch list for some reason. I actually like this chart. I got to figure out why it's on my watch list after we're done here. It's there for a reason. All right. So next thing I want to talk about, I saw an article maybe like yesterday where, Bill Ackman wants to create a modern day Berkshire Hathaway, why he's no Warren Buffett. So I know he's like trying to clone Berkshire Hathaway, which you can't blame him. The one thing I wanted to comment on that is Warren Buffett isn't Warren Buffett, and there will never be another Warren Buffett. And yeah, and this happens over and over again. I mean, one of the reasons why we did the inverse ARK ETF was because CNBC and everyone would tout Kathy Wood as the next Warren Buffett. And whenever I hear that, I mean, that's immediately short. Yeah, because there will never be. Warren Buffett, Peter Lynch. I mean, some of these guys, they came of age during a time where we didn't have the internet. So if you wanted to research a stock, you're going to the library. So, if I'm smarter than you and I'm harder working than you, I'm going to uncover stuff that you're not. This day and age, we've all got access to the same information. Again, you may evaluate that information better. You may know what Palantir does and I may not, but, are you going to be able to consistently find undervalued stocks that Wall Street has missed, or growth companies that are going to grow faster than Wall Street thinks? No, you're not. So, whenever you see, oh, so-and-so's the next Warren Buffett, no, there will never be another Warren Buffett. So any thoughts there?
Well, I do. This is a little bit complicated, but I'm going to start from the beginning. First of all, this is an important consideration. I mean, Howard Hughes' company itself, right, basically is like a developer of, modestly nice houses all over America. You know what I mean? So, big communities. Cool. But like, I actually put this in Chat GPT, and, one thing it came out and said is that there's no float power or compounding engine. So, besides the fact, that, Bill Ackman's a smart guy, like, how is he going to run the business like as an insurance company? That's number one. Important or not important? Doesn't matter. Okay.
I don't think it matters.
Okay. Number two, I think Bill Ackman's a smart guy. And so then Matt talks about, AI and what it can do. Right. So the other day, and I'm just going to throw this out there. We had this idea, or I did, or someone in the company did, that we could create like an AI decision maker to help us, like, and Matt does this, but I just more like a toy or an app or something fun we could mess around with. And so I made it. But here's the thing. It took me like 20 minutes to do it. But along the way, I asked like 4 or 5 providers how much this would cost. And one guy literally told me it was going to cost me $100,000, right? $100,000 to make this AI engine. And I was like, WTF, right? And so then I talked to another guy, a really smart guy, and he said, Pat, you can do this yourself in like 10 minutes, right? So I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm going to ChatGPT, put in like all our information. It's I don't know, 10 lines of command, and it spits out like the greatest information, right? Now, needless to say, I think this. So, they're really smart people. I think I'm smart. I think Matt's smarter than I am. But this kind of AI allows like the regular Joe to like bridge the gap, I think. So I agree with what Matt's saying. I think across the board,
levels the
playing field. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, like Wall Street research reports, I get a ton of them. I don't read them. I dump them into, ChatGPT knows my portfolio. I dump it into ChatGPT and I say, basically anything in here I should pay attention to. And then if it picks stuff out, then I'll dive deeper. Like, okay, but I already own these 4 stocks. Does me adding this stock help me? Probably not. Cool, we're done. Or yeah, you know what? It does. And there's just so many different ways that it's going to level the playing field. It gives me personalized investment advice for $200 a month. That's totally unbiased, that has access to the whole universe of information out there. Now, it's not always going to be right. Again, Jeremy Vreeland's the only one who's always right, and too bad he's not here, but I'm sure he'll listen to the recording. But that's a game changer. Again, I used to be a broker. You wanted financial advice, you called a broker. And most brokers were sales guys. ChatGPT is, you used to be a broker.
Breaker,
imagine if we were still brokers in an era where I could just throw it, hey, should I buy this stock? Throw it into ChatGPT. If we were still commission brokers with what's out there right now, I mean, that would scare the heck out of me.
Yeah. So this thing that you say about Jeremy reminds me of this joke, because he used to say as a kid, where he'd be like, "Yeah, ask me, my dad know everything in the world. Ask me," and then someone would say, "Well, what is the capital of so and so?" And you're like, "Oh, that's the one my dad knows, right? That's this, right?" Yeah. No, I don't have a lot more on this, but I do agree though that even someone like a regular person can. I think the beauty of I'm going to say one more thing, and let me digress. Right. I think Matt is very systematic in his investment style. I would say we haven't discussed this, but I think he's very systematic, and you know, and so someone like myself, I fail to fit into these systematic boxes a lot in my thinking, and so I think if you can put like a system or a set of like yeses and nos into the chat GPT and kind of create your own system. I think I think there's a lot of opportunity there just for you to say, all right, I have these parameters and what I want to do. Let me put in a stock. Just type in, NVIDIA, and see what it pops out. Is it fit what I want to do? What is it you want to do? Maybe what Matt wants to do and what you want to do aren't the same thing. Maybe your goals and his goals aren't the same. But if you can define those goals on ChatGPT and create a pretty simplistic way to spit out some information that is valuable, may not be correct, but I think it's valuable. I'm down on that. That's my digression.
All right. So I mean, we're pretty much gone an hour. Let's end it here. I think good first podcast, and we'll be back same time next Thursday.
All right. See you guys. Thank you.
All right.
Adios.
Bye.